Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillahi wa ala alihi wa ashabihi wa man walahu ba'd. So we're continuing, and inshallah we will finish today the chapter on the names of Allah Azza wa Jalla, Al-Akram and Al-Kareem. The names Al-Akram and Al-Kareem subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we already saw that, speaking in a very general English translation, of course, most of the names of Allah Azza wa Jalla cannot be translated into a single word in English. So Al-Akram and Al-Kareem would be the most kind, the most generous, and also the most honorable, the most deserving of honor, subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so you could translate it in that way, but as we've seen, there are so many angles to these names. And of course, the names Al-Kareem and Al-Akram themselves have a slight difference between the two names themselves. And last time we ended up with 16 different ways by which Imam Ibn al-Arabi al-Maliki rahimahullah ta'ala went through different effects that it has on our iman, or slight different information that can be derived from the fact that Allah Azza wa Jalla has the names Al-Akram and Al-Kareem. So inshallah we'll continue on that theme. He's already discussed these 16 points, but we're continuing on the theme of how it affects our iman, that we know that Allah Azza wa Jalla has the names Al-Akram and Al-Kareem subhanahu wa ta'ala. So one of the points that the scholars bring up is that who else does more good than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So Allah Azza wa Jalla says, وَإِن مِّن شَيْءٍ إِلَّا عِنْدَنَا خَزَائِنُهُ وَمَا نُنَزِّلُهُ إِلَّا بِقَدَرٍ مَعْلُومٍ. Who else is it? Allah Azza wa Jalla says that وَإِن مِّن شَيْءٍ إِلَّا عِنْدَنَا خَزَائِنُهُ. Everything that exists, it belongs to our treasure. إِلَّا عِنْدَنَا خَزَائِنُهُ. It belongs to us, and it is under our control, Allah Azza wa Jalla says about Himself, and He only sends it down, we only send it down except by a very precise and exact amount to everybody. So who else has more good than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So among the effects that we know, by virtue of the fact that Allah Azza wa Jalla has the names Al-Akram and Al-Kareem, is the fact that there is nobody else who deserves to have this name more than Allah Azza wa Jalla, because nobody else does more good, nobody else has more good, nobody else owns more of the sources of good than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Himself. Additionally, Allah Azza wa Jalla Himself is always doing good. Allah Azza wa Jalla is always doing good. He is always giving favors, always giving blessings, always taking care of His creation in one way or the other, subhanahu wa ta'ala. Additionally, Allah Azza wa Jalla makes the good easy. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it easy for us to do good. So He says, وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ. Whenever one of my slaves asks you about me, then I am near. And there's an interesting point that comes up in this ayah, where the scholars always talk about this when they talk about ayat that begin with a similar pattern. وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي. So Allah Azza wa Jalla says, يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْخَمْرِ وَالْمَيْسِرِ قُلْ فِيهِمَا إِثْمٌ كَبِيرٌ يَسْأَلُونَكَ مَاذَا يُنْفِقُونَ قُلْ الْعَفْوَ يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْأَهِلَّةِ قُلْ هِيَ مَوَاقِيتُ لِلنَّاسِ. They ask you about this, say this is the answer. They ask you about that, tell them this is the answer. They ask you about that, tell them this is the answer. This is the only ayah where Allah Azza wa Jalla says that they ask you about something and He doesn't say tell them. He says, يَسْأَلُونَكَ وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي. When my slaves ask you about me, فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ. Then I am near. He didn't say tell them I am near, because even in the ayah He wants to show how near He is to the person who's asking about Him, the one who's making dua to Him subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to show His nearness to that person. He doesn't even want to say tell them I am near, because that's too much of a separation, even just in the language, right? So He says, وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ. When one of my slaves asks you about me, then I am near. Allah Azza wa Jalla says, continuing, أُجِيبُ دَعْوَةَ الدَّاعِ إِذَا دَعَانِي. I answer the dua of anybody whenever that person makes dua to me. فَلْيَسْتَجِيبُوا لِي. So let them seek a response from me. وَلْيُؤْمِنُوا بِي. And let them believe in me, subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah Azza wa Jalla wants to give us the response. Allah Azza wa Jalla wants to give us what it is that we're asking for. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to bless us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to give us more and more. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to reward us. And in fact, there's nobody else who will be happy when you ask them more. Because even if you ask your parents, you ask them for a favor, you ask them for some money, they'll give you once, they'll give you twice, 10, 15, 20 times, and so on. Eventually they'll sit down and say, hold on, this is not such a good behavior. Right? Even our parents would say that. And forget our friends or brothers, sisters, or co-workers, or whoever. Allah Azza wa Jalla is the only one who gets happier the more we ask Him. The more we ask Him, the more that shows that we are worshipping Him, and shows that we are in need of Him subhanahu wa ta'ala, and shows that He is Al-Akram and Al-Kareem subhanahu wa ta'ala, because He's the one who's always giving, He's the one who's always being generous, He's the one who's always responding to us. So therefore He not only wants us to ask Him, not only gets happier the more we ask Him, He orders us to ask Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. So He says, فَلْيَسْتَجِيبُوا لِي. So let them seek a response from me. وَلْيُؤْمِنُوا بِي. Let them ask and let them believe in me. And he said, أُجِيبُ دَعْوَةَ الدَّاعِ إِذَا دَعَانِ. I respond to the dua of the person whenever he makes dua. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also, the things that He gives us are of great value and are very important. And so therefore, the one Himself who is giving us those things, He is, of course, He is Al-Akram and Al-Kareem, the one who has the highest value, the one who is the most important, subhanahu wa ta'ala. Similarly, because He is Al-Akram and Al-Kareem, the most honorable, the most generous, the most giving, the most caretaking, therefore He is free from imperfections and free from faults. Because if He is telling us that He is giving us all of the, and we know that He is giving us all of these things, and that He has the capability to give us more and more, and He's happier with us the more that we ask Him, subhanahu wa ta'ala, and everything that He gives us is a source of good, so therefore Allah Azza wa Jal Himself is not the source of evil, does not have any evil, does not have any imperfections or faults. Compare that to any of the creation. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about the human beings, He says, لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي أَحْسَنِ تَقْوِيمٍ ثُمَّ رَدَدْنَاهُ أَسْفَلَ سَافِلِينَ. We have created the humans in the best shape, and then we put him down in the lowest of the levels. We put him down in the lowest of the levels. ثُمَّ رَدَدْنَاهُ أَسْفَلَ سَافِلِينَ. So Allah Azza wa Jal Himself is honored, Allah Azza wa Jal Himself is valuable, everything that comes from Him is honorable and valuable, and therefore He Himself is the most honorable and the most valuable of all, subhanahu wa ta'ala. Similarly, one of the things that we saw and the Shaykh is re-emphasizing is the fact that Allah Azza wa Jal, because He is Al-Akram and Al-Kareem, He doesn't give us as a payback for what we do. It's not a form of compensation. In other words, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not give us food and drink and health and wealth because we have done something for Him. Because we prayed salah, therefore we get this. Because we made dua, because we are good to our parents, because we're good to our kids, therefore, no. Allah Azza wa Jal gives, and He gives out of His generosity, and He gives to people that are good, and He gives to people that are bad. He gives to people that believe in Him, He gives to people that disbelieve in Him. He gives to people who obey Him, those who disobey Him, those who believe in Him, those who disbelieve in Him, those who are good to people, those who are evil to people. Allah Azza wa Jal gives to all. Why? Because He is Al-Akram and Al-Kareem, subhanahu wa ta'ala. And additionally, therefore, the scholar said, He gives without reason. The only reason, if you want to attach a reason, is because He is Al-Akram and Al-Kareem, therefore He gives, therefore He is generous to all of His slaves, subhanahu wa ta'ala. People, on the other hand, they give to show off. They give to show off, to show I'm giving, I'm taking care of you. Look how much I've done for you. If any one of your kids behaves badly, you say, don't you live in my house. I take care of you. You live under the roof. The roof over your head is something that I paid for. I paid for the food that you eat. I paid for those clothes on your back. I paid for your education. Allah Azza wa Jal doesn't respond to us, doesn't deal with us in this manner. So the people do it in order to show off. The people do it or for the sake of trying to get close to something. Right? Like they might say, well, I gave some money to your friend, so therefore we should be close together as well. They're trying to gain some favor, they're trying to gain some benefit like that. Allah has no need of any of His creation whatsoever, subhanahu wa ta'ala. So therefore He is Al-Akram and Al-Kareem. He gives simply out of His generosity, simply out of His honor, subhanahu wa ta'ala, not because of a form of payback, and not because He's trying to show off or to benefit Himself in any way from that. Similarly, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives to those who need and those who don't need. We've seen that already. Also, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives even the tiniest, smallest, insignificant things. If we ask Him, and we should ask for even the smallest things. For example, Al-Qushayri rahimahullah ta'ala, he says, أن موسى عليه السلام قال في مناجاته إنه لتعرض لي الحاجة أحيانا فاستحيي أن أسألك. Musa alayhi salam was making dua to Allah Azza wa Jal. And so he says, sometimes I have a need, but it's a very small, tiny thing, so I'm too shy to ask you. He's making dua and he's speaking to Allah Azza wa Jal. He said, I feel shy to ask you. فَأَسْأَلُ غَيْرَكَ. So I ask somebody other than you. Meaning, I go ask my friends, I ask somebody, basically for a very, very small thing. And we'll see. So, فَأَوْحَى اللَّهُ إِلَيْهِ. So Allah Azza wa Jal sent down revelation to him and He says, يَا مُوسَى لَا تَسْأَلْ غَيْرِي. Don't ask anybody else other than me, O Musa. وَسَلْنِي حَتَّى مِنْحَ عَجِينَكَ وَعِلِفَ شَاتَكَ. So ask me about even the tiniest things, even the salt for your dough, and even the fodder for your sheep. Ask me for even these tiniest, smallest things. Allah Azza wa Jal wants us to ask, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is happy with us when we ask, and He's happier with us the more that we ask, and we shouldn't be shy to say, oh Allah, I have a tear in my socks, can I have a new pair of socks? Oh Allah, I have a pain in my thumb, will you cure my thumb? Oh Allah, I made a 99 on my grade. Oh Allah, allow me to have 100 on my exam the next time, every single time. Oh Allah, always give me 100 on all of these exams. It sounds minuscule, it sounds ridiculous, but just like a person might say a pinch of salt in the dough when you mix the dough together to make bread, that sounds so small and ridiculous, you could get it from any neighbor or any friend or anybody, but that's exactly what the scholar is saying, that this is what the quote is, that Musa a.s. was being told to ask Allah Azza wa Jalla for everything, even these tiniest, what we might think is insignificant, yet it is a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is a blessing from Allah, so therefore, Allah Azza wa Jalla, because He is Al-Akram and Al-Kareem, it befits that we would ask Him more, and it befits most that we ask Him as opposed to somebody else. Also, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala never destroys the good of anyone. Allah Azza wa Jalla, because He's Al-Akram and Al-Kareem, He doesn't waste the good, He doesn't destroy the good of anybody. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّا لَا نُضِيعُ أَجْرَ مَنْ أَحْسَنَ عَمَلًا. We don't waste the good of anybody who's done anything good. We don't waste the reward of anybody who's done anything good. So don't think that, like the Prophet ﷺ says, لَا تَحْقِرَنَّ مِنَ الْمَعْرُوفِ شَيْئًا. Don't look down on anything that's good. وَلَوْ أَن تَلْقَى أَخَاكَ بِوَجْهٍ طَلْقٍ. Even if you smile in the face of your brother, even if you smile at somebody, the Prophet ﷺ says, don't look down on anything. Don't consider it small, don't consider it insignificant. Meaning the Prophet ﷺ is saying that Allah loves for us even just to smile. Just to smile. Allah loves that. And Allah would reward us for that. And the Prophet ﷺ wanted us to do that more. So therefore the Prophet ﷺ encouraged us to do these small things which we might say is so insignificant. Say salam, afshu salam baynakum. Tahadu tahabbu, spread gifts and you will love each other, exchange gifts, you will love each other. Why? Because this is what builds a society. This is what builds a family. Imagine if the family never smiles at each other. Imagine if the family never says salam. Imagine if you come to the masjid and you never have somebody say salam, or you never see somebody smile, or there's no exchanging of any gifts, or how are you, let's have some iftar, let's go for lunch. Where's the society, where's the building blocks? Where does that come from? This is where it starts from, something small, though we might consider it insignificant, though we might consider it like useless, but in reality, Allah Azza wa Jalla and the Prophet ﷺ want us to not think small about anything. لَا تَحْقِرَنَّ مِنَ الْمَعْرُوفِ شَيْئًا. Don't look down or don't consider anything good as being insignificant. Because this is what the Muslim character is, after all, right? The Muslim character is built upon small things. You build up these small things, eventually you get something. You have more and more of those things, eventually it becomes a mountain. Where does that come from? Except it starts from something very, very small. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala encourages us in Hadith Qudsi, meaning that the Prophet ﷺ is quoting Allah Azza wa Jal. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أَعْدَدْتُ لِعِبَادِيَ الصَّالِحِينَ مَا لَا عَيْنٌ رَأَتْ وَلَا أُذُنٌ سَمِعَتْ وَلَا خَطَرَ عَلَى قَلْبِ بَشَرٍ. He says, I have given and I have set aside for my slaves, for those slaves of mine who do good things that no eye has ever seen, and no ear has ever heard, and the idea hasn't even come across their hearts. They haven't even imagined it. They couldn't even imagine it. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Al-Akram and Al-Kareem. He gives us so many blessings and so much good in this life. Well, there's even more than that, multiplied way beyond even our imagination in the hereafter. So Allah Azza wa Jalla definitely is Al-Akram and Al-Kareem, because not only do we get all of the stuff that we get now, and He takes care of us and everything now, then there's even more in the hereafter. But it's only for those ibadi as-salihin, for those of my slaves, as He says, who have done excellent, those who have done good. So Allah increases it. He gives more. He gives more and more good. And again, is this payback for something that we did? Did He benefit from our salah? Does He need our salah? Does He need our dua? Absolutely not. He's the master. He's the creator. We can't do anything to benefit Him. We can't do anything to harm Him. He simply does it out of His generosity, because He's Al-Akram and Al-Kareem subhanahu wa ta'ala. Among the amazing things about Him being Al-Akram and Al-Kareem, His generosity, His honor, is that He Himself feels shy to turn us away when we ask Him of something, subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Prophet ﷺ says, إِنَّ رَبَّكُمْ تَبَارَكَ وَتَعَالَى حَيِّيٌّ كَرِيمٌ يَسْتَحْيِي مِنْ عَبْدِهِ إِذَا رَفَعَ يَدَيْهِ إِلَيْهِ أَنْ يَرُدَّهُمَا صَفْرًا. The Prophet The Prophet ﷺ says, your master, exalted and glorious He is, that He is Hayyun Kareem. He is honorable, and He has haya. He has that shyness. He is yastahyi min ibadihi. He feels shy from one of His slaves, that when one of His slaves raises up his hands to ask Allah, that Allah will turn away His hands without receiving anything. He's too shy to do that, subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now again, when we discuss some of these attributes of Allah, shyness in this case doesn't mean anything bad. It means that he, out of his characteristic of being Al-Akram and Al-Kareem, his names being Al-Akram and Al-Kareem subhanahu wa ta'ala, it doesn't befit his majesty that we would turn to him and we would ask him and we would put ourselves down. We would say, Ya Rabbi, Ya Rabbi, Ya Khaliq, Ya Malik, Ya Raziq, Ya Ghafir. I'm asking you by all of these wonderful names. I'm in deep trouble. I need something. Oh Allah, please give me something. And Allah feels shy that we ask him, we beg him, we show that we're his slaves, and that he feels too shy to turn us away without having given us something in response. Whether it's what we ask for, or something else, or removing some other difficulty, or a reward, or rewarding us in the hereafter, whatever it is, we get something from that dua in one way or the other. For that reason, the scholar said, your dua is never wasted. You always benefit from dua. Whether you get what you want, or you get something else in exchange for that, or you get some problem removed, or you get a reward for that in the hereafter, one way or the other, we always benefit from dua. You cannot lose in dua. And so therefore, the Prophet ﷺ says that Allah is too shy to turn us away when we ask him, and that he leaves us empty-handed. Also, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he is among the things that the Prophet ﷺ, when he used to make dua to him, he used to say, Allahumma la khayra illa khayruk wa la ilaha ghayruk. He says, Oh Allah, there is no good except for your good, and there is no one who deserves to be worshipped except you. So again, being Al-Akram and Al-Kareem subhanahu wa ta'ala means that he is good in everything. Everything from him is good, everything about him is good, everything about him is perfect and excellent without any negative attributes whatsoever, subhanahu wa ta'ala. Among the amazing things of Al-Akram and Al-Kareem is the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives to everybody. Even Iblis, even Shaitan himself. When he made dua to Allah Azza wa Jal, Allah Azza wa Jal even responded to his dua where he says, قَالَ أَنظِرْنِي إِلَى يَوْمِ يُبْعَثُونَ. Give me time until the day of judgment. قَالَ إِنَّكَ مِنَ الْمُنظَرِينَ إِلَى يَوْمِ الْوَقْتِ الْمَعْلُومِ. You are among those people who have been given time until that specific day, which is known to only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So even Shaitan made dua to Allah, and Allah Azza wa Jal responded even to his dua. So what then about us if we say that I'm too sinful, I'm too bad, I did this, I did that, I shouldn't make dua, I'm too shy to make dua to Allah? Well, a person who had no shyness whatsoever, pure arrogance, Shaitan himself, even he made dua and Allah responded to his dua as well. Among the things that we understand from Al-Akram and Al-Kareem is that Allah covers the sins. And in fact, he even changes the sins to good. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about the believers. He says, إِلَّا مَنْ تَابَ وَآمَنَ وَعَمِلَ عَمَلًا صَالِحًا. Except for those people who return back to him. They believe and they do good deeds. فَأُولَٰئِكَ يُبَدِّلُ اللَّهُ سَيِّئَاتِهِمْ حَسَنَاتٍ. Allah will turn their sins into good. وَكَانَ اللَّهُ غَفُورًا رَحِيمًا. And Allah has always been oft forgiving, and he has always been so loving and merciful, subhanahu wa ta'ala. And among the amazing things about the names of Akram and Al-Kareem subhanahu wa ta'ala is one very interesting hadith. The Prophet ﷺ said, as reported by Abu Dhar al-Ghafari, that he says, the Prophet ﷺ says, إِنِّي لَأَعْلَمُ آخِرَ أَهْلِ الْجَنَّةِ دُخُولَ الْجَنَّةِ. So he says, I know the last person who will enter paradise. وَآخِرُ أَهْلِ النَّارِ خُرُوجًا مِنْهَا. I know the last person who will exit the hellfire. رَجُلٌ يُؤْتَى بِهِ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ فَيُقَالُ. A person who will come on the day of judgment. فَيُقَالُ أَعْرَضُوا عَلَيْهِ صِغَارَ ذُنُوبِهِ وَارْفَعُوا عَنْهُ كِبَارَهَا. So a person is presented on the day of judgment. And so he's told, in front of him, all of his sins are being brought. And so the small sins are brought first. فَتُعَرَّضَ عَلَيْهِ صِغَارُ ذُنُوبِهِ. So all of the small sins are brought first. فَيُقَالُ عَمِلْتَ الْيَوْمَ كَذَا وَكَذَا. So it will be told to him, you did such and such on that day, and you did such and such, كَذَا وَكَذَا. وَعَمِلْتَ الْيَوْمَ كَذَا وَكَذَا كَذَا وَكَذَا. And on that day you did that and that, and you did the other thing too. فَيَقُولُ نَعَمْ. He says, yes, absolutely, I did all of these things. لا يستطيع أن ينكر. He's not able to deny any of these things because he knows every single sin, every tiny thing that he did on that day, December, January, February, March, 1, 2, 3, Monday, Tuesday, 9 o'clock in the morning, 10 o'clock in the morning, 10 o'clock at night, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, every single thing is being presented to him. And he's not able to deny any of those things. وَهُوَ مُشْفِقٌ مِنْ كِبَارِ ذُنُوبِهِ أَنْ تُعَرَّضَ عَلَيْهِ. And now he's scared that now the big sins are going to come. These are all just a small sin. What about the big sins? They haven't been presented yet. فَيُقَالُ لَهُ فَإِنَّ لَكَ مَكَانٌ كُلِّ سَيِّئَةٍ حَسَنٍ. So it said to him that for each of these sins, you get a reward instead. Each one of them gets turned to a reward. فَيَقُولُ رَبِّي قَدْ عَمِلْتُ أَشْيَاءَ لَا أَرَاهَا. He says, oh my master, I did some other sins which I actually don't see here. So he feels, فلقد رأيت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ضحك حتى بدت نواجذه صلى الله عليه وسلم, because he says, oh, all these sins, and he's so scared, he thinks he's about to be destroyed because the other major sins haven't come yet, and then he's suddenly told, well, all of these sins get turned to good deeds. So then he says, oh, wait, I have some other things that I should do which I don't see here yet, because he's expecting to get more reward now too. When the Prophet ﷺ was saying this, then the narrator Abu Dhar, he says, I saw the Prophet ﷺ laughing when he told us this, to the point where you could even see the back of his teeth, the back, the molars, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Why? Because it's so amazing. They think this guy thinks he's destroyed, he's ruined completely. And who is he? He's not some famous companion, a scholar, a big name, big shot. No, he's the last person to enter paradise. He's the last person to come out of the hellfire. That's what the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says. He says, I know this person, that the last person to come out, meaning the lowest level of honor that anybody will get. He's the lowest level in paradise because he's the last person to come in. Yet even this person gets his evil, his minor sins converted to good. What about then his major sins? What about the reward? What about the extra blessing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give him on the Day of Judgment? And this hadith is found in Sahih Muslim and At-Tirmidhi, and Imam At-Tirmidhi said, Hasanun Sahih. Also, the Prophet ﷺ says, Allah Azza wa Jal says, as reported by the Prophet ﷺ, so again Hadith Qudsi, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Inna Allah kataba al-hasanati wa sayyi'at thumma bayyana dhalik. Allah Azza wa Jal has prescribed what are the good deeds and what are the evil deeds, and He explained the difference between them. فَمَنْ هَمَّ بِحَسَنَةٍ فَلَمْ يَعْمَلْهَا كَتَبَهَا اللَّهُ عِنْدَهُ حَسَنَةً كَامِلَةً. Whoever does a good deed, whoever intends to do something good, but he didn't do it yet, one reward is written for him. فإن هو هم بها فعملها كتب الله عنده 10 حسنات إلى 700 ضعف إلى أضعاف كثيرة. Famous hadith. The Prophet ﷺ said, now if he intended to do it and he actually does that good deed, then he gets 10 rewards up to 700 times, and maybe even it gets multiplied even more than that. And whoever intends to do an evil deed but he didn't do it, Allah writes it down for him as yes. So وَمَنْ هَمَّ بِسَيِّئَةٍ فَلَمْ يَعْمَلْهَا, then he intended to do an evil deed and then he didn't do it, that gets written down as one good deed. And if he intends to do some evil and he does it, then it only gets written down as one evil deed, right? So Allah Azza wa Jal, and there's a couple of different versions, a couple of different narrations of this hadith, but it shows again, because Allah Azza wa Jal is Al-Akram and Al-Kareem, so He multiplies out the good that we do, and He just very, very precisely specifies what it is, the evil that we do. By the way, as a side point, the scholars say, what does it mean that a person intended to do evil but he didn't do it? How can he be rewarded for not doing something evil? They said because he stopped himself. He had patience, or he had some kind of tawbah, or he did some kind of muhasabah, something to hold himself back, to stop him from doing that evil, right? Not that he was on the way to rob the bank and then he hit a flat tire and then so he did some evil that he couldn't do. No, it means that he intended to do something and then for some reason, sabr, tawbah, whatever, somehow he stopped himself. So he gets the reward for that sabr or tawbah. That's where that good deed comes from. Additionally, just a couple of points and then we'll end inshallah. A person, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Al-Akram and Al-Kareem, a person even gets rewarded for the good that their children do. Imagine your children pray salah, your children read Quran, your children memorize, whatever good it is that they're doing before they become adults, the parents get the reward for that. The Prophet ﷺ was asked during the time of Hajj. A woman came, فَرَفَعَتْ إِلَيْهِ امْرَأَةٌ صَبِيًّا فَقَالَتْ, a woman came and she raised up a baby in front of the Prophet ﷺ. So she said, أَلِهَذَا حَجٌّ, can the baby make Hajj also? The Prophet ﷺ said, نَعَمْ وَلَكِ أَجْرٌ. He said, yes, and you get the reward for that. Because it's a lot of work to take care of the baby on the Hajj, and she has to take care of her own things that she has to do. Now she has to take care of the baby also. So therefore the baby's Hajj is doing Hajj. It doesn't count for them. They have to do it again when they fully grow up. But the lady gets the reward for that. Just like any one of us, inshallah, might get the reward for the hard work that it is to teach the kids how to pray salah, to read Quran, to be good, to have patience, to all of these kind of things. Then the parents get the reward for that as well. Similarly, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shows us that if we want to have honor, if we want to have karam, that honor and generosity that Allah Azza wa Jal wants, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Inna akramakum inda Allahi atqakum. The most honored of you in the sight of Allah are those people who have the most taqwa. And just one or two things inshallah. The Quran itself is called Kareem. The Quran itself is called Kareem because the scholar said, number one, everything is honored by it. Everything is honored by the Quran. The Quran itself, the book is honored. The people who teach the Quran, they're honored. The people who memorize the Quran, they're honored in this life and in the hereafter. The people who teach and learn the Quran, they're honored. The Prophet ﷺ says, خَيْرُكُمْ مَنْ تَعَلَّمَ الْقُرْآنَ وَعَلَّمَهُ. The best of you are those who learn the Quran and teach it. So Allah Azza wa Jal shows that everybody who has a positive connection to the Quran gains honor from the Quran. So therefore the Quran itself, إِنَّهُ لَقُرْآنٌ كَرِيمٌ. The Quran itself is a book of honor, and the Quran itself is a source of generousness too. Because isn't it true that anything we benefit from the Quran is a source of good for us? So therefore, therefore the Quran itself is Kareem. Also, the scholar said that the Quran is Kareem because it encourages the good behavior. The Quran honors those, Allah Azza wa Jal honors those who have memorized the Quran. The Quran is not magic. The Quran is not something, the Quran is, it is the word, the actual speech of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So therefore, because it is an attribute of Allah, therefore it itself is a connection, it's an aspect of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So therefore it has to be something honored because it is something that Allah Azza wa Jal himself said, subhanahu wa ta'ala jalla jalaluhu. Also, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about the people in paradise. What is it that they get in paradise? لَهُمْ دَرَجَاتٌ عِنْدَ رَبِّهِمْ وَمَغْفِرَةٌ وَرِزْقٌ كَرِيمٌ. They have high statuses in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they get forgiveness and they get an honorable rizq, they get an honorable sustenance in paradise, which is the paradise itself. And with that, inshallah, we will end, inshallah, and if there's anything else. Yes.
So you said how like if somebody was going to do something bad and they stopped themselves and they did these. What if somebody like was going to do something bad and then they ended up doing something less bad?
If it was due to, no, that's an excellent question. If they were intending to do some evil and then they decided to do something less than that. So the scholar said that because it's dependent on, this is an action of the heart. Intention is all about, it's amalun qalbi, it's an action of the heart. So if the action of the heart was, I intended to rob the bank, but then the bank has too much security, so I pickpocketed the guy's pocket instead, right? So that's not, there's no action of the heart, that no goodness that took place here. It's just simply a matter of this was not possible, so I did that instead. Both are evil, one is more, and one is less. In this case, as I understand, there's no good associated with this whatsoever. But if it was an example of a person intended to do something evil, huge evil for whatever reason, and he realized that this is a major sin in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and in the process he talked himself down from that. He had patience, he had tawbah, but he's still not able to fully get himself away, so he does something minor sin instead, right? So by virtue of the fact that he had enough sabr to bring himself, or let's go this way, he had enough sabr to bring himself up from a really evil major sin to the level of a minor sin, inshallah, going from here to here is an action of the heart, and so inshallah he's rewarded for that, inshallah. So at least going from here to here is a reward, and then there's still the possibility of a threat associated with that sin, which is still that minor sin. This is why when the scholars talk about, when they talk about wa'd and wa'id, there's the promise of a reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and there's a threat of punishment. In English, this is a good translation to say promise and reward. Both are not promises, promise of reward and promise of threat. Because Allah Azza wa Jal doesn't promise to punish us. Rather, He threatens us with punishment. It's up to His generosity if He decides to just forgive anybody. That's why He says, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَغْفِرُ أَن يُشْرَكَ بِهِ وَيَغْفِرُ مَا دُونَ ذَلِكَ لَمَن يَشَاءُ. If He decides to forgive, He will forgive anything that's less than shirk if He decides to do so. For anybody if He decides to do so, subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if Allah Azza wa Jal decides, it may be that a person gets the reward for going from this major sin up to here, and He might simply erase that person for having done that minor sin. And we don't know, only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows, right? I'll give you an example, which might answer your question better. We know that in the hadith of when the Prophet ﷺ spoke about the three men who got stuck in the cave, and then they went in the cave seeking refuge from a thunderstorm or something, and a big rock came down and blocked the door of the cave, and then they all start saying we should make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by something that we did sincerely for His sake. One of them says that I had a cousin who I love very much, and it became time, this and this and this, and she came to me and she said that she needs some money real bad, and I said, yes, of course, I'll loan you the money, but you have to do this haram thing. So the hadith says that he came very close to her. Now the sins, the closer that he's getting to the sins, the worse and worse the sins get. But he came very close to her, and then she said, fear Allah. And then he said, I got scared and I moved away. So he didn't get down to the lowest level of the major sin itself. But he has done all these other sins in between, right? And so he says, oh Allah, if I had stopped myself from committing this sin because only out of your sake, only out of fear of you, then Allah remove us from this difficulty that we're in. The rock move a little bit, not enough for all of them to get out. And then the other two mentioned their stories as well. So perhaps, because it is a rewardable thing, his dua got accepted, and the Prophet ﷺ is showing that it is a praise of this person that his dua is accepted, that he didn't do the major sin, he had done several things up to that point. He's going down the slippery slope, right? He's almost at the point of the thing itself, but he didn't do that yet. And because he stopped himself from doing that, he got fear of Allah just at that point, so therefore that's a rewardable action, and so that might answer your question. That out of fear of Allah, he stopped himself from doing the major sin, but he has done some minor sins. Perhaps that is an analogy for Allah. Any other question or comment?
It's interesting, you mentioned that Allah doesn't promise the punishment, but there is ayah about the reward. وَعَدَ اللَّهَ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ لَهُم مَغْفِرَةٌ وَأَجْرٌ عَظِيمٌ.
Exactly. And the scholar said that's why there's a very interesting linguistic difference between wa'ad and wa'id. Because if you say, I wa'ad you something, I have promised you something, and I decide not to do that, then this is a huge sin on my part. I broke my promise. But if you say, I threatened my child with punishing them, you messed up your room and you didn't clean up your room, if you do that again, then you have this time out, or you have, you'll be grounded for the weekend, whatever it is. And then the child does it anyway, and you say, okay, fine, I'll let it go this time. Now, does that mean that I broke my promise? No, I threatened them with a punishment, and then I decided out of my generosity not to act on that punishment, not to actually act on that threat. That's why this is called wa'id. In Arabic, they're not both wa'ad. One is wa'ad, the other one is wa'id. And that's why it seems that promise and threat is a good one, because you can let go of your threat for your child out of your forgiveness, out of your generosity, whatever. And for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He threatens with a lot of things, but if He decides to not punish, that is out of His generosity, subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if He decides to punish, it is out of His justice, subhanahu wa ta'ala. But anytime He promises something, if we fulfill the conditions of that promise, Allah definitely will give it to us. Because it is a promise from Him, and Allah never breaks any of His promises. That's a very good point. I'm sorry. Yes. I don't know.
You said that the children do something good, their parents will be rewarded for whatever they did.
Yeah.
And until they're an adult.
Yeah.
So my question is, when an adult to do something good or bad, would their parents will be rewarded or punished about what the adult did? Or not?
In certain circumstances. And so the question is that once a person becomes an adult, will the parents still receive some reward, or possibly even worse, a threat of a punishment by virtue of something good or bad that the child has done? They might receive a copy of the reward, because the Prophet ﷺ says that anybody, مَنْ دَعَا إِلَى الْخَيْرِ فَلَهُ أَجْرُهَا وَأَجْرُ مَنْ عَمِلَ بِهَا. A person who invites somebody to do good, that person gets the reward for that, and the reward of everybody who does that. So if I teach my child to pray Salah, then every time they pray Salah, I get a copy of that reward too. And even after they become an adult. Additionally, if they go and they teach somebody else how to pray Salah, then my child gets the reward of that Salah, who the third person is praying, and then I also get that because I started this chain, right? So therefore, it is possible that a person might get the reward of that by virtue of the fact that they taught that child how to do this. That's different from the other case where the lady's holding the baby and doing the Hajj. The baby hasn't learned how to do it, right? So that's different from that. The baby's not going to remember this, but she gets the reward for that because she had to act on and work hard to take care of the baby doing all this stuff. The second part of your question is, can they possibly get a threat of punishment by virtue of something that something bad that the child has done? And that the answer to that could be yes, if they have taught that child that. So, for example, the scholar said that Habil and Qabil. Qabil killed Habil, of the two sons, and it's mentioned in the Quran. So he killed. So he killed his brother because out of the jealousy and injustice and everything. And this was the first murder that had ever taken place in all of human history. And the Prophet ﷺ says, and the scholars explain this to show that when Qabil killed Habil, then he is the first person to have done a murder. And after that point, anybody who ever murders anybody ever, Qabil gets a copy of that sin because he's the first one who started this evil deed. So he's the one who started this evil idea, put that idea and showed people how it is done and what you might have to go through if you do this. And so therefore now every society, every country, every people, they have this concept that there's such a thing called murder. Well, where did that all originate from? It originated from Qabil, so he gets a copy of all of that. So And this is a very, very serious, very scary thing, which is why we never ever want to be on the forefront of some sin. Never. It is bad enough that everybody else is doing a sin and I get caught in it too. But what would be way worse would be if somebody says, oh, maybe this is a brand new thing. Nobody's ever done gambling in this way, let's figure out how to technologically enable it. Right? I make a lot of money, but I just encourage and I showed people how to do it. Now, everybody would get a copy of that. I'm sorry, I would get a copy of that whenever somebody else did that. Right? So it's a very serious and very scary thing. So, Wallahu ta'ala. I'm sorry.
Yeah, when we think about Allah's generosity, by nature we think it's materialistic generosity. But Allah tells us, Surah Al-Fajr, فَأَمَّا إِذَا ابْتَلَاهُ فَأَكْرَمَهُ. So, it's actually a bala. What is bala?
It's a test.
It's a test. These materialistic blessing, and it's a test if we don't get the materialistic blessing. But the real blessing is having iman.
That's true. Absolutely.
When we say Allah is most generous, it really is giving us the iman to be able to pass this test.
Absolutely. To have the iman to be able to pass the test, and also in the couple of ayat after that point, وَأَمَّا إِذَا قَدَرَ عَلَيْهِ رِزْقَهُ فَيَقُولُ رَبِّي أَهَانًا. Whenever the rizq has become tight for him, then he says, oh, my master has humiliated me. كَلَّا بَلَّ تُكْرِمُونَ الْيَتِيمَ. He says, no, you're actually the ones who are behaving in a dishonorable manner because you don't give honor to the orphans. So when Allah decides to give us some blessings, material blessings, money, food, whatever that is, then we don't share that with anybody else. If we don't share that with anybody else, which would be number one, due to lack of iman, which is exactly the point that you pointed out. Due to lack of iman, due to lack of following the Prophet ﷺ, therefore we don't share that generosity. We don't share that, and I mean, after all, the orphan is in like the most sad situation that anybody would be in, right? Why wouldn't a person try to go out of their way to bring at least some kind of benefit? So Allah shows that even if He does give us karam through the generous ways, through the money and the food and whatever that is, if we don't respond to it in the best manner because we lack the iman to do so, exactly as you pointed out, then that shows how we are displaying dishonor in the face of the blessing that He's given us. So that's a very good point. That's a very good point.
And the Akram piece with Akram and Allah have
Absolutely.
They both fit in.
Because absolutely. The Ikram and the Karam is always connected to Iman and Amal Salih. Absolutely. Thank you very much. Yes.
How would one go about making tawbah for the chain of sins? Is there any special type of istighfar for that, or is it just general, you understand what I'm saying?
Sure.
For the because growing up here and being in a situation where you have fallen astray for a while, you may have certainly threw off a chain of bad influences on people. Is there some type of a tawbah special?
So the scholars speak about this kind of thing. They say that, first of all, just general tawbah. Of course, a person has to stop doing that sin. A person has to seek istighfar, seek forgiveness from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But also, if they were in a position, if that person was in a position to have started that and to have influenced people, then it really makes sense for that person to also go back and influence people the other way. So for example, if a person was in a situation where they said, I used to smoke openly, and I used to influence other people to smoke as well. Right? Because I was in a high societal position and I showed up on the TV and smoking or advertisements, whatever, and people used to follow me because I used to do that. Well, later on, perhaps it really would be good for that person who has that level of influence to show up in front of everybody else and say, this is what happened to me, and this is the evil that it brought, and this is why it hurt everybody, and this is why you shouldn't do it. And this is an exception to the case. Usually, the scholars say, if you have done a sin, don't tell everybody about the sin. Don't tell anybody, because the sin is between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? But they say that the exception would be if a person can use that to their advantage to bring about more good. Not for their advantage, but to bring about more good for the society, to the society's advantage, right? To say, I used to do this and look at what happened to me. I used to do this and this is why you shouldn't do it, and here's the evidence. Here's the x-ray of my lungs, for example. This is I'm just giving an example, right? All of these things can happen to that person. So by showing himself as having gone through that process, and to say, this is the effect of that sin, and especially by using the influence that they have. I mean, imagine anybody of a high status influence comes and they say, openly, rather than keeping the Islam to themselves. Imagine if an important sports star or a Hollywood person or a politician or something like that, imagine that they openly declared their Islam in this time, right? They're making tawbah from all of the things and bad influences they used to do. Now they become Muslim and they don't want to hide it. They could hide it. It's not a good time to be a Muslim in America, right? Or in Europe or whatever it is. But imagine that, and they know they're going to lose their job. They know they're going to be ruined and all kinds of horrible things will happen. But imagine this person stands up and says, I became a Muslim and this is why. And this is why you should become Muslim too, right? It brings personal embarrassment to that person. It will bring financial loss to that person for sure. But just by the virtue of the fact that they were influential, inshallah, that'll bring about more good. So just as an example, perhaps they used to do something evil, perhaps whatever source of bad influence on TV or Hollywood or whatever. Imagine this person stands up and says, I'm a Muslim now, and this is why you should believe, and this is why you should become Muslim. So, wallahu ta'ala. I'm sorry, yes.
So you were talking earlier about like how you could complain to Allah even relieve the smallest of difficulties.
Mhm.
But like Prophet Ibrahim, like he didn't complain for like a long time. So I was just wondering, like, is it like special things he's a prophet or something?
Yeah, this seems to be that it was something special about Ayyub alayhi salam. That, and he didn't complain because it was in his nature to never complain to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when he finally did make dua, he said, Rabbi inni masani ad-dur. He said, hardship has touched me. Wa anta arhamur rahimin. He didn't complain about all of the problems and all of the difficulties that he's faced. Compare this to Yaqub alayhi salam. He says, قَالَ إِنَّمَا أَشْكُو بَثِّي وَحُزْنِي إِلَى اللَّهِ. He said, I do complain. And I do complain about my weaknesses and my problems, but I only do it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? إِنَّمَا أَشْكُو بَثِّي وَحُزْنِي إِلَى اللَّهِ. My sadness and my complaint, but it's only to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that was very fast, very quickly after the loss of Yusuf alayhi salam. Right? And similarly, when the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam went through the difficulty of Ta'if, he said, he makes a very beautiful dua. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam says, Rabbi inni ashku ilayka da'fa quwwati wa hawani 'ala an-nas. He says, oh Allah, I complain about my weakness and the fact that I'm humiliated in front of everybody. Anta Rabbi Allahumma inni ashku ilayka da'fa quwwati wa hawani 'ala an-nas. Anta Rabbul mustada'afina wa anta Rabbi. Oh Allah, you are the master of everybody who's weak, and you are my master also. Ila man takiluni. Who are you going to turn me over to? Ila aduwin yatajahhamuni. To an enemy who's going to destroy me, who's going to ruin me, who's going to dishonor me, or ila rajulin mallaktahu anni, or somebody else who's you have given control over me. And so the Prophet ﷺ is complaining to Allah, and he is making dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so this is just my understanding, is that Allah wants us to make dua to him, and he wants us to complain to him. And so we should say that, oh Allah, you are Ar-Raziq, and you know the difficulty that I'm in. Musa alayhi salam says, Rabbi inni lima anzalta ilayya min khairin faqir. Oh Allah, I'm badly, horribly, terribly in need of anything that you send out to me. Rabbi inni lima anzalta ilayya min khair. Any good that you give me, I badly need it. I am in a terrible situation right now. Because he ran away from the CIA, and he only had the clothes on his back, and this is all he has. Right? So he sits down in the shade of a tree, and that's what he's scared from. Right? So, Allah Ta'ala. I mean, if there's anybody else who has a different point of view, that perhaps we should have patience and not make dua to Allah, then, but as I understand, that's an exception. Fadl.
No, it's not different. It's exactly the same. It's just the word complain in English is sometimes more negative than the shakwa. Shakwa, we're turning to Allah in a positive way, not complaining that He has done this to us.
Yes.
We're complaining that this is my condition,
Yes.
and I'm seeking your help.
Yes, that's
So
excellent.
that's different than complaining. Complaining in English means we're
Blaming.
almost blaming somebody. You did this to me. How could you do this to me?
Sure.
So shakwa is a little bit different.
Yes, that's a very good point. That's a very good
I
point.
want to say the same, because ashku is not like bad as complaining.
Yeah, exactly. That's a very good point. That's a very good point. And that does bring up an excellent point, which is that we, as part of being the slave of Allah, we never ever blame Allah for anything. Never. Ibrahim alayhi salam, when he says, إِذَا مَرِضْتُ فَهُوَ يَشْفِينِ. When I make myself sick, then He's the one who cures me. So he's attributing the cure for the sickness to Allah, and he's attributing the sickness to himself. He's, I get myself sick. إِذَا مَرِضْتُ, I make myself sick, then Allah is the one who cures me, subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if he's going to have shakwa, or he's going to blame or complain, he's complaining that I did it. Even if we use that word, but you're absolutely right, that it's really about the sadness. Allahumma inni ashku ilayka dha'fa quwwati. I'm sad that I don't have the strength to be able to do this, to be able to, make things easier in the da'wah of Ta'if for the people. Then he even got back to Makkah, and the Makkans refused to let him back into Makkah. He was stateless, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was a refugee out of his own home, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He wasn't allowed, basically, they didn't renew his passport to even enter his own house, alaihi salatu wasallam. Right? So this is, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam became very sad. How is he being banned from his own city? So not only the people of Ta'if treat him this way, then the people of his own city treat him this way, and the Prophet ﷺ is, talking to Allah about the sadness and the feeling of, what would be a good translation of shakwa in this case? It's not blame, it's not complain.
I take this matter to you.
I turn this matter
to you,
yeah.
meaning I surrender, and it's more of a surrender
Sure.
than it is, filing a complaint here, that means, you did me wrong, I'm going to file a complaint against you.
That's true, that's true. That's true. That's absolutely true. That the context in English means just like I have filed a complaint against my whatever, against that company that cheated me on the telephone bill. So that indicates that I'm blaming them for something that they did they shouldn't have done. Right. So that's true. So you're absolutely right. Complaint is not a good translation for that. So,
It's also used the same, because like if you have a problem with your electricity, then we have it called maktab shikawa.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's the same. It's used.
Okay.
Whenever you complain,
Right.
it's used shakwa.
I see.
But in this matter here, it's not a real complaint. It's more like admitting or saying what's happening to me. Allah, you know what's happening to me.
Right.
And even we said in Arabic sometimes, the shakwa lillah. Whenever you need to tell everybody, tell it to Allah.
Yeah.
To ask Allah.
Exactly.
Shakwa lillah.
Exactly.
So you're taking it to a third party. You're taking the issue to a third party, not to the person who caused you the...
Yes. Yes. That makes, okay, that's very good. That's very good.
Shakwa lillah.
Right, exactly.
It reminds me of this big collection of Iqbal who wrote Shikwa.
Jawab Shikwa.
He wrote a big collection of poetry,
Yeah.
Shikwa. He was complaining to God.
It's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Then he wrote a Jawab Shikwa.
Mm.
He wrote it himself. So I don't know, that Shikwa is probably complaining.
That Shikwa's complaint, yeah. That's complaining to Allah, yeah, that was different.
Yeah.
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 And I plead my,
Plead.
Plead or admit my weakness. Yeah.
I plead my grief
Plead my
and
grief.
sorrow before God.
Mm-hmm.
Plead.
Excellent. Yeah.
Crying out or something.
Cry, to cry and to show my grief, to show my, absolutely. That's very good. I'm sorry, Khalid.
Just want to go back. This might sound weird, but I was thinking about it somehow.
Mhm.
I was very curious. I want to go back to when you talk about Qabil and Habil.
Mhm.
And I think Adam, our father,
Mhm.
he had only those two sons, right?
This part, I'm not sure. I almost certainly understand that he had many, many sons and daughters.
Okay.
And we'll have to go back to Israeliyat to find the details of that. But for example, in Tariq Ibn Kathir, rahimahullah ta'ala, he talks about this, and he talks about the Sheath and several others. They mentioned several names. Habil, Qabil, there's Sheath, there's others. And some of the scholars mentioned that possibly they moved to different lands, and they even had different skin colors also, and so they were the original progenitors of different races, and a lot of them knows how.
They at least had a sister.
They absolutely had brothers and sisters, and this was one of the reasons why Qabil decided to kill Habil, because he was jealous that Habil was going to marry the lady that he wanted to marry instead. So among these reasons, he wanted to kill him so he could marry her instead.
Yeah, that's the reason I was asking, because I was thinking if there is Qabil and Habil,
Yeah.
and Habil is the pious,
Mm-hmm.
and Qabil is the murderer,
Yeah.
and he killed him,
Mm-hmm.
and if we are the progeny of Qabil,
No.
so maybe that's why there is so much killing.
That's a good question. Yeah, sure. Yeah, that is interesting. But as I understand, we're the progenitor, I mean, we're descended from all of the children of Adam alayhi salam. However many they were, and I have no idea, I have to go back to the books
Yeah,
and see
there's
if
some
they mention
riwayat
it.
says up to 40. I mean, up to
Could have
40
been many, yeah.
sons.
Yeah.
Thank God.
His sons are the people of the. So that's the
Are the people of what?
the people who's killing are from all the other sons.
There you go, that's an
Like
answer.
ISIS.
Any other comment or question? طيب إن شاء الله نعمل الآن جزاكم الله خيرا سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. That brings us to the end of this chapter, and so inshallah we'll begin a new chapter now.